Okay, this is John Willis, Botchagaloop. We're here at Lindsay, Holmwood. We're basically doing this kind of DevOps 5-year reunion video series. So 5 years ago, I had the opportunity to kind of stumble into an event going on in Ghent, Devopsdays, run by Patrick Dubois, and so I wanted to kind of celebrate. There were about eight or nine people that were there. There were about 30 or 40 people there, but there were about 8 or 9 people there that just kind of went out and really spread the word, and even geographically based. So the first kind of guest here is Lindsay, my kind of funny story. I really was kind of I'm still clueless, but I was very clueless back then about a lot of things, and I had just coming off a lot of work with Tivoli infrastructure, where you would put these you'd have these hierarchical structures of servers. I did an implementation where we had actually to manage like 50,000 nodes in a monitoring system. We had to have like 500 Tivoli servers, I take that back. It was about 50 or 60 Tivoli servers. Had that wrong. But still, that was a nightmare. It was a mess. And I ran into Lindsay, and he's giving this presentation about some tool he wrote, and I got him to talk about it. And he's using queuing and a queue system, and I'm like, oh my god, like that's the way monitoring has to work. So I went up to him like, you got to tell me more about this. You got to tell me more. And he starts talking about how he was, kind of had the same performance problems with Nagios. Anyway, I'll let you talk a little about in the end of that, because your Flapjack is an awesome project. But Lindsay, welcome. And how did you wind up at that Devopsdays Ghent?
Yeah, that's a good question. The funny thing there is that I almost didn't actually end up getting there. So Patrick sort of, I started following Patrick on Twitter like maybe 6 months before, when I started backpacking around Europe, and and then he sort of put out this thing of like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this event, and I'm like, yeah, I could totally come to that. And he's like, all the way from Australia, and I'm like, no, actually, I'm backpacking in Europe. And he's like, oh, that's awesome, like you should totally drop by. And then we were sort of we ended up in Barcelona, and I was backpacking with my wife, and it was like the day before we decided that we were just gonna skip France entirely and go from Barcelona to Ghent, and we did it in a single day. And we ended up like after the first leg of the train trip, we ended up in Montpellier, and it turned out that there was this enormous strike, and no trains were going anywhere. So I found this like shitty McDonald's just near the train station, and I sent Patrick an email like, "Hey, I'm sorry, I might not actually be able to make it on the first day. I'm sort of stuck in the middle of nowhere in France." And he was like, "Oh, that's totally cool. If you can make it, you can make it." So, but I ended up doing it, and it was about 18 hours on a series of trains. So that was pretty hardcore. But that really goes to show just how devoted I was to DevOps before DevOps was even a thing.
Oh, no kidding. I mean, well, and we'll get to, I think, I think what you've done. I'll say that now. I mean, there were a group of people that like kind of left there and just head was like spinning, and you were, we had the gang that I'm going to get on the call in UK. There's the guys in Europe, but you kind of went back to Australia and really to kind of started driving that stuff there. But before we get to that, I to me, when I sat through, I had no idea what to expect. I mean, I was pretty excited, like you. I was like, oh my God, this could be huge. But to me, it was almost a validation of my career when I got there. I thought about all the crappy stuff that I've been trying to do for, at that point, probably 20, 25 years for customers. And all of a sudden, I'm seeing all these young guys talking about this stuff that's kind of mind-blowing. And I'd already seen, like, kind of Luke stuff with Puppet, so it wasn't like I had, I was totally... But I came out of there just, like it was a new career. I walked out of there like, I know what I'm doing now. I have a purpose. So I could sense that everybody that was there had that kind of same feeling. How about yourself?
Yeah, definitely. Like I was sort of, I was at a bit of a nexus with my career as well, and that I'd sort of taken a year off to go backpacking, and
Huh?
but before that, I'd been working in like a combination of I started out my career in operations, and then I sort of decided to switch more towards the development side of things, and I did Ruby and Rails development for a solid 2 years. So I was pretty involved early on in that as well. But yeah, I mean the funny thing even about the development stuff that I was doing is like even then I would sort of have that focus around the operations side of it. So I was sort of already, those ideas were there. They just weren't. They were nascent. They weren't fully formed yet, and that was the real game changer with that conference. And then it was like, oh my God, there are these other people that totally see the world from the perspective that I have. Plus, they have the vocabulary to actually articulate what some of these problems were, which I was just simply lacking at the time. So it was like, wow, these are my people, and now I need to go and I need to go and spread the word. It was very, very biblical.
The vocabulary is a good point, right? I guess even the word DevOps, we struggle to worry about, like, what does it mean? Should it be redefined? But it was a vocabulary that we could all, like, no, I know that guy in Australia. He was at the Devopsdays. So this is the hard one. So what do you think has happened over the last 5 years?
That's a good question. I think that I was still very fringe up until maybe 2 years ago, and then I mean you can see it in all the different surveys and studies and whatnot that have been released, and the take up since mid 2012, early 2013 has just been enormous. So yeah, it's really progressed quite quickly from being sort of like this. On the edges, sort of a bunch of weird people talking about weird stuff to being pretty mainstream within 5 years. That's a pretty remarkable achievement. I think the truly impressive thing about the movement is that it's genuinely making people's lives better. Like there's plenty of things that have happened within IT over the history of the industry. And like little movements here and there, and how many of those sort of things actually have that sort of profound effect on people's lives on a daily basis, and like the level of happiness that they actually experience in their jobs, like that really just blows me away. That it's provided a language and a vocabulary and a talking point that is fundamentally changing the way that people are working and making them happier as well, and not just making people happier, but delivering value at the same time. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, no, that was, to me, it's funny that until I met Gene, Gene Kim, I think everybody knows him, but until I met him, I hadn't really thought about to me, it was just that I've been trying to solve problems for customers for 15, 20 years and always felt guilty that the technology that I was using, the Tivoli, the HPs, I'm sorry guys, it was just, we weren't getting it done. And all of a sudden, wow. And so to me, it was funny you say that, because I wouldn't I wasn't being saintly about like, oh, this is going to make people's lives better. But then when I met Gene, and he started talking about like our industry being, like high suicide rates, and we're mean to our families because we get woken up at 3 a.m. And I realized, oh my God, yeah, this is like even better than I expected. It was very cool. So what's the future? I mean, these are hard and ridiculous questions, but like since we're doing this, I mean, it's ridiculous to a point, but like I hate this word, but there's no other better word to say it. You are truly, in my opinion, so I'll say it without apologizing, you are a thought leader in DevOps. And so, I mean, so I think your comment on what the future is very important. So what do you think?
I think we're going through an interesting period in that now that it's hitting the mainstream, we've sort of gone through that. Up until very recently, it's been very difficult to actually articulate to people what DevOps is. Like, there are lots of different ideas about what it is, but like there's a more fully formed definition about what it actually is. And maybe it's not so optimistic of me, but I perhaps wonder if the movement is sort of calcifying a little bit and becoming a little bit too inward focused. That was one of the really brilliant things actually about the first event in particular, but the first couple of years, and that it was still trying to find our feet about what actually it was, and it was so many different things for so many different people, and now it's really sort of becoming more formed. I worry about it not remaining weird. That was the really big thing about it.
Not weird. Awesome.
You sort of need this whole, keep DevOps weird sort of thing going on.
Totally. All right. Well, since we'll get this thing promoted, so where do people get you? Why don't you tell us what about some of your cool, or one of your cool projects?
Yeah, sure. So, so I work as a engineering manager now, actually, at a hosting company, a mission critical cloud company.
Oh, keep Lindsay weird.
Yeah, well, that's the other funny thing as well, in that I've sort of been doing development and operations stuff for the couple of years leading up to the event, and then within 6 months within 12 months I was within a management position. So sort of been looking at it from a completely different angle on top of that. So I run a team of people that are globally distributed, and we basically build products internally for the business to help people solve problems. But probably the most interesting thing externally visible from what we're doing at Bulletproof is a project called Flapjack, and Flapjack is an alert routing system. So basically, you set it downstream of different check execution engines like Nagios and Sensu and Astinga and things like that, and it'll handle notifying lots of people. We actually just launched a 1.0 a couple of days ago, so we haven't made much fanfare about that. We're just sort of still ironing out all the bugs. But yeah, I'm actually going to be talking at Velocity, New York, with one of my colleagues in a couple of days, or a couple of weeks now.
Yeah, no, I'll see you there. I'm there too. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, awesome. And so yeah, I'm going to be giving a Flapjack tutorial workshop with my colleague Jesse Reynolds, and I'm also going to be at PuppetConf in San Francisco come a week after that as well. And that's going to be a pretty interesting talk, because I'm going to be giving a second edition version of my DevOps field guide to cognitive biases.
Ah.
So I'm going to be doing more of a operations spin on it this time.
Oh my goodness.
That should be fun.
I love your presentations, dude. All right, well, cool. I wanted to try to keep this short and sweet. I think we did it. Thanks a lot for coming on. I know it's crazy hours over there. So thanks again, buddy.
No worries. Thanks for having me, John.
All right.